I was watching Kidology's video about the loneliness of young people and how it's on the rise, and we've seen a lot of research about that coming up, and I just was thinking about the ways in which society is actually killing young people. And one of the ways is hyper-individualism coupled with competition, and this is really reinforced from the time you're young. It starts in the homes and then schools and then the workplaces, and all around we've just created a toxic society from the home. It's toxic homes, toxic schools, toxic work environments. When we look at business news, it's all about self-made people, as if anyone can ever be successful on their own. You just cannot, because even someone like Elon Musk, who's said to be self-made, I mean, there are other people who are working for him. He's just not being successful on his own. When you go to the workplaces, because people have been taught to always compete, you find that your colleagues are always trying to look out for themselves and will do everything to sabotage you. They will pretend to be your friend. They will take all information about you. They will go to social media, and then they are going to use that against you. And you're like, what kind of society are we creating? And this really causes a lot of mental stress, because it's against our nature as human beings to just try to be individualistic and compete on everything and not trust other people. But because the societies we live in do not really care about mental health, the society is telling young people, you need to stack it up, as other generations have been doing. We don't have time to be dealing with your mental health issues. That's why a lot of young people are really struggling today. And most of the time when you ask parents, why are you doing this to your kids? They're like, I am doing this for my child's good. They're saying that they're pushing you to get the best of grades, to be better than everyone, because they care about you. But when you watch the Kdrama Sky Castle, you would actually see that a lot of these parents are acting from their own greed. They want their own children to achieve their own goals that they couldn't achieve for themselves. They want their children to be their source of prestige, and so they're pushing their children not for the children's sake but for their own sake. This drama really shows how it really affects children and how it really pushes them to even a mental break point. Another K-drama that I really love that really shows the extent of hyper-individualism or the consequences of extreme individualism is the Penthouse War in Life, and it shows how there are parents who will even kill other children so that they could get a spot for their own child in a prestigious school. That sounds really extreme, and it is, but it is a consequence of hyper-individualism. When you really put a lot of pressure on someone to succeed and to become better than everyone, they're going to do whatever it takes, and sometimes whatever it takes means killing somebody else. No one wants to do that. But when you create toxic societies, people become toxic human beings. Recently in Kenya, there are students of a high school, Kumukumu Girls, who actually suffered from food poisoning while at school, and some students passed away. And of course, the school was closed after that so that they can start investigations into what really caused this. But the shocking thing is that some parents were actually calling for the schools to be opened, because they're like, it wasn't my child, so I really don't care. I need my child to go to school, to go study and get better grades. And I'm like, these children are suffering from trauma. They have seen some of their students die from eating the food that they all ate. Some of them were actually hospitalized, and you're still saying that you want the kids to go back to school because what? You care about good grades? Do these parents even love their children, or they're just using their children as the stepping stone to a better life or to have prestige? Like, what? What kind of society accepts this? And it's even more shocking that the general Kenyan public is just quiet, because this is something that always happens. There are even students who are killed through beatings in school, and no one says anything because they're like, oh, it wasn't my kid. This is the consequence of hyper-individualism, because people just care about themselves. They don't realize that when something is happening to somebody else, you could face the same situation and no one is gonna care about you. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of young people are really suffering, because you just put in situations where you're really going through a lot of emotional stress, but the adults are looking at you and they're like, we went through worse. You have to suck it up. We don't care about you. You have to get the best of grades. You have to be better than everyone. They don't care whether your own health goes into jeopardy. Another way in which the society is actually killing young people is that the worth of a human being in today's society is really put in the productivity that one has towards the economy. And we know that a lot of young people are really having a hard time with finding employment. So that means that if you're not employed, you're not adding to the economy in the way that the society tells you, you're not making money, you are unworthy. The society at large makes it as if it's the problem of young people instead of really looking at the systems that we have. Because if a lot of young people, like in Kenya, over 70% of young people are unemployed, it's clearly not the young people's fault. Young people are always being told, go to school, work hard, get the best of grades, and you're going to get a good job. And you do that and you do everything and you end up not having a job. Clearly, it's not your problem. I mean, we are living at a time where people are working up to 100 hours a week and they're still living paycheck to paycheck. They can't even pay their bills. They can't even afford to buy a house. It's not the people's fault. Living in a world where you are told that your only worth is in producing for the economy, that is really damaging. And if you decide to do something creative, if you decide to even use your time and your talents to help society, people like social workers are not even respected. Look at teachers and the way they are always being treated. No respect at all. It's like the only way you're going to get respect and dignity for your work is if you have a lot of money, if you have a lot of cars, if you have big houses. No wonder a lot of young people are even getting into crime. Over the past days, there has been a case involving a network of young people, actually young men, who have been stealing cows. This is one of the first times that I'm actually hearing about crime in our village. And the thing is, people are like, how can these young people do this? But I'm also like, yes, I do understand that crime is not a good thing, but what are these young people supposed to do? If the only way people would actually look at you with dignity, will think that you are worthy of being called a human being, is if you have money, you can't get a job, you can't get money, what are you going to do? These young people have just been pushed to a wall and they've gotten to a point where they're like, okay, we're gonna steal cows. And this is a menace that is going to continue growing if nothing is really done to get to the bottom of it and ensure that we're creating systems that work for everyone. Then there's the case of isolation and oppressive communities. When it comes to isolation, it is actually a consequence of hyper-individualism, because we've really taught people from a young age to distrust other people because you're always in competition with others. So don't trust anyone because everyone is out to get you. And because of this, people have really isolated themselves to protect themselves. But what are you really protecting yourself from? And as people are getting more and more isolated, we are creating ways in which we can create convenience into people's lives. You don't feel like going out of your house. Oh, there's a delivery app for your food, for your groceries, for everything. You can do online shopping. You don't ever have to leave your house. And people are really getting used to convenience that they're actually copy-pasting it into relationships. But you can't expect relationships with human beings to be convenient, because a human being is not there to serve you. You have to make sacrifices, you have to make compromises, but we've not created human beings who are capable of doing that. How are people supposed to have healthy relationships when we've commodified everything, including relationships with each other? And add to that the fact that there's really little motivation to make people go outside, because nowadays you have to pay for everything. Even if you have a hobby, you have to pay for it. But you want to meet your friends, you probably decide to meet at a restaurant, you need to have money so that you can afford the food, because the restaurants, again, are not going to allow you to just sit there without buying anything. This is one of the reasons why I really appreciated the 3 years that I was in France, because they really create free spaces for people, whether it's the parks, whether it's the libraries, whether it's going to the cinema, whether it's museums, especially for young people under 26 years. For most of these things, it's free. So even when you don't have money, you can go out to the park and have a walk. But in Kenya, you will have to pay for it. I really think when it comes to the treatment of young people, Kenya is really the worst. It's really the worst. And I just don't know how people survive, because everything is just toxic. It's a capitalistic system, patriarchal system. Everything is just hyper-individualistic. And then add corruption hidden behind. We are a community, but it's really an oppressive community. Why? Because one, children are brought up to be hyper-individualistic and competitive. And then add to that the fact that the society only values you if you have a lot of money and a prestigious job title in a prestigious company. So you have people who are hyper-individualistic, who only care about money and who only think about other human beings as a means to an end, as tools to use for their own good. And then you put them together and tell them this is a community. Is that a healthy community? It's even worse for women, because we live in a patriarchy and we are always being told that our only worth comes from serving a man. So even if as a woman you get a high-paying job with a lot of money, you're always going to be reduced to, oh, you slept your way to the top to have that job. There is no way you're able to travel around like that. You must have a sugar daddy. So again, you're being reminded over and over again that you have no worth because you are a woman. And then you'll be reminded that you need to get married and have children so that you can be worthy of respect. And then you also have to put up with being harassed in the workplace because people are going to be commenting about how you dress, or if you wear makeup, oh my god, it's going to be, she wears makeup because she thinks she's better than all of us. I mean, you wear makeup because you want to. It's really, so imagine living in such kind of a society. It's really tough. Mentally, it's really tough, and there's really no one to listen to you. And even if you go to therapy, you'll go to therapy and talk about these things, but you're returning to the same oppressive environment. So you're really not changing anything, and this really compounds over time, and that's why a lot of young people are really depressed. A lot of young Kenyan people really going through it. And something that is really causing a lot of young people to go through a lot of mental stress is the existential crisis that was brought about by the COVID-19. Now, through this pandemic, a lot of young people realized, the way the world has been working, it doesn't actually make sense. And everyone agreed with it. But the problem is the adults decided that, yes, we've seen that the way we've been doing things is not really good, but we're just going to go back to it anyway. And young people are like, no. We want to have lives where we are actually living as human beings. And I really think the reason why a lot of older generations are just being stubborn is really because they want to justify the suffering that they went through. So they want young people to also go through the same suffering. They're like, no, there is no way young people are going to have it good. Do you mean that from 20 years old, you're going to have a good life, not working all the time, breaking your bones and getting sick because of all that stress? Are you telling me that you want young people to not go through all of that? But we did it. We had it worse. How dare you say you want better? That's how they're behaving. At this point, you're just like, aren't you the ones who are supposed to be wise? Aren't you the ones who are supposed to be like, the climate crisis is really becoming worse. We need to do something about it. But no, they just sit it down, doing nothing. And it's the young people that now have to leave school and actually go protest so that these politicians can hear something. And the adults are just sitting somewhere being like, look at these young people. You should go to school. What do you mean climate crisis? Nothing is going to happen. I mean, imagine living in such a world. This is just causing a compounding of stress slowly by slowly, and a lot of young people are really tired. And one of the things that I see on TikTok, people just say it as a joke, like my 13th reason why, and I'm just like, this is actually dangerous because it'll get into a point where people are actually joking about not wanting to leave, and no one is listening. No one is listening. And that is really scary because it means we've got into a world where we don't care about each other and our selfishness is killing us. The only thing that the governments seem to be worried about is the fact that young people are choosing to not have children, and they're like, we need to do something about it because it means they're not going to have people to work. So again, they're reminding us that our worth isn't how much productivity we give to the economy. What kind of world have we created?